What would you say to someone who says money can't buy happiness? Caught Eyes 1990 said, "Poverty doesn't buy anything." Big Pickle Cam said, "I've been poor and now I'm fairly well off. When I went from under $15K a year and surviving off the grace of friends and family to $30K a year, my happiness more than doubled. In fact, it was not calculable, my increase. I had food, shelter and a handed-down Xbox, fully belly and somewhere warm to sleep. I now gross well over $120K a year and I might be twice as happy as I was when I settled into my $30K a year lifestyle. For a time while I worked like a dog to change careers and had zero social life, I was not happy at all. I think money can buy you out of misery, but it can't buy you into happiness." Sickly Diode said, "I remember passing out from a lack of nutrition while on a food budget of 20p per day, 27 cents, while worrying if I could keep a roof over my head. It's stressful as fuck. Earning enough money to not worry constantly about money is a relief I don't think I could describe in words. Sure, it's not happiness, but it's damned hard to find happiness without it." 99 But Wolf Balloon said, "Exactly. Very poor people are hardly diagnosed with anything because it takes money to be diagnosed and treated. When I was younger and poorer, I had all the same problems I have now with none of them diagnosed. Once we had an income where it was a given that we could afford our healthcare deductible, then I started getting diagnosed and treated for everything I had. Now I take anxiety medication when I need it, a few times a month. But I have the same anxiety disorder I've had since my teen years, but with a formal diagnosis and treatment plan now that I have the money." I Am Your Just said, "This. I hate being poor. It sucks a lot when you have a passion for something. I want to be a wildlife photographer for a living. I like taking pics of apex predators. But I really can't afford to buy some good cameras and lenses. I took this pic, https://i.pnmg.com/f9/2zero/b2/ab64d8970cf1620e4580b7c2.jpg, last week. Sorry for the low quality pic. I used my phone to take that pic, but you guys can see what makes him an apex predator. I think I've captured that moment really well. The pic would have been even more good if I had some good cameras and lenses." PD Max said, "You don't need an expensive camera to take good photos. Do you really think someone can tell the difference between photos taken by a $200 camera versus a $2,000 camera? It's the person who wields it that's important. I prefer small, cheap, point-and-shoot cameras because they're always ready when I need them and because I'm always lugging them around on adventures. You never know when a good photo op will come up, and it's easy to damage a camera if it's tied to your belt while hiking, skiing or cycling the back roads. Buy used." Brain Synastic said, "Ketamine infusions aren't covered by insurance, but esketamine is. Depending on where you live, it might be hard to find a clinic that offers it. IDK how widely adopted it is yet. It works the same way as ketamine infusion. You could also try microdosing, or full dosing, but I recommend microdosing. Psilocybin, active ingredient in shrooms. Lots of psychedelics are being studied for depression and they're believed to work in pretty much the same ways. They may be illegal but still cheap and accessible in most places. There's also TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, and ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. TMS is a breeze to go through and works for more than half of people for whom medication did not work. ECT is more intensive and causes temporary short-term memory issues but has an 80–95% success rate. Both should be covered by insurance but are also subject to availability in your area, as they require special equipment. There's also VNS, vagus nerve stimulation, but that's actual surgery, and studies show people who don't respond to ECT don't respond to VNS either, so I recommend ECT instead." Respect for All 512 said, "The psychology studies that concluded money doesn't buy happiness were working from a standpoint of bills being paid with some disposable income. After that point, more money doesn't correlate to more happiness, so focus on hobbies, family, ECT instead of killing yourself to get a promotion. Before that point, money and happiness are absolutely correlated." Zellau City Bet 754 said, I saw a study once, probably in like 2008, where in a per country they paid people to do a somewhat basic job and their performance effort would improve the more they paid them, up until something they considered to be like the equivalent of $75K a year, and then the money stopped being much of a factor. After that, performance didn't get better, no more effort or whatever, and that's always kinda stuck with me. Money doesn't buy more from anyone after a point. But being on the other side of the dollar sign market, people bending over backwards to try and earn a living. And I think you're absolutely right that the same comes from people who are already making more than enough to live comfortably. LJG Hunter said, "It's a saying that was originally meant as an admonishment to the rich. It was telling them that no matter how much wealth a rich man acquired, if he wasn't already happy, there was no amount of money that would purchase it for him. It wasn't meant to imply that poor people should be happy starving to death and working for shit wages, but like so many other things, it's been bastardized." Shiguiwe said, "I don't doubt that millionaires face hardship and have difficulties in their lives. Some of these problems may even be similar to the ones poor people experience. But I just spent a quarter of my paycheck at the dentist because for the 10 years before I got my current job, going to the dentist before this became a huge issue would have taken all of my paycheck. And that's with insurance. Pretty sure that's not a millionaire problem, and unfucking my teeth a while ago would have helped me a lot." Potato TG said, "Absolutely correct. That's what I always wonder. A poor person becomes happy when they get enough food to fill their stomach. A middle class becomes happy when they can afford special food. But for a rich person, they can have everything. So not so much happiness about food. It's like how we need detox. When you eat like 5-star hotel guest daily, even the most precious food becomes meh. I call this first world problem or rich people problems. The point is, money does matter, but after a certain limit money doesn't matter. I forgot the number though." Star Martyr said, "Maslow's hierarchy of needs talks about this a great deal. At the bottom are our base physical needs like food, water and shelter. Next is safety and security. All of these base needs can be purchased. As you get higher, happiness comes from things that you can't buy. Things like love, friendship, family, and personal esteem can't be ordered off Amazon. When you're poor, money will make you happier, but only to a point. After that, all you can buy is things that are pleasurable, but only bring fleeting happiness." Zimanda said, "At a high income level though, the word typically means I don't need whatever random exception you can think up, have the ability, leverage, and clout to greatly affect how those 40 hours of work each week are done. That can make a huge difference in someone's overall happiness, as opposed to a lower income person who has less responsibility but has to be exactly where their boss says when they say it, so to speak." Miss Rass Workshop said, "Well, that's not really true. It's sort of the fantasy someone who doesn't have money have of the wealthy. Ask the kids of wealthy parents how much they see their parents. My old boss, who has a net worth in the upper 9 figures, worked longer hours than me. People don't seem to understand that when you have a successful business, that doesn't mean you stop, it means you have even more responsibility to make sure it keeps succeeding." Lord Thanks 3117 said, "Tistfu. Stability aids happiness. Money aids instability. You can pay to eat, to have the things you need to survive, to go to the doctor, a place to rest your head. No money? No shelter, no food, misery. Poor people who used to say that? That was before the welfare reform of the 90s. When you could be poor, get help, and hope that your children will break the cycle because you were given enough help. I remember having a lot of great times when I was really poor, but that is a bias. Car hell alone, weird living situations. My GF and I rented a room in a duplex where the woman rented out 6 bedrooms, 2 sunrooms as bedrooms, and lived in the attic and her son in the basement. $125 a month in the 90s. I was making $16.8K at the time, and in constant car hell. No car? No job. I had to have someone drive me for a month once." Satterer said, "To a certain extent it's right, to a certain extent it's wrong. I have a solid wage. It buys me my home, my clothes, my car, my vacation, my restaurant visits and my booze, my camera and 100 small things. If I want to have something I can usually buy it, within reason. To this extent it buys me happiness, satisfaction and quality. However, I refused any further promotion at work and burned the bridges to HR on that matter, as any higher position would mean a loss of job happiness. Money can't outweigh this. I found my place in life. The Lionth to message arm said, many of my clients have a fair bit of wealth. Not many have fuck you money, but enough that they're not hurting. It's interesting how many of them are terribly happy. Some are downright miserable, thinking everyone is jealous of them and they have no friends, but refuse to pay for anything because if they do they may not have enough money. Others who have structured their will so that children receive a small fraction of the estate because they want their children to work and make their own way. Some are just unfulfilled by the toys they continue to buy. Physipop01 said money doesn't buy happiness, but it opens the door for experiences and freedoms that might give you great joy. My dad always told me, if I'm not happy working as a lawyer, I can always flip burgers, but I can't go from flipping burgers to an attorney job without considerable time and education. While it doesn't scream follow your dreams, it's very realistic. No career path is linear, but it's easier to go down a hill than up. My dad wasn't able to become an attorney until his early 30s, but he worked very hard to get his education and ended up doing well for himself. The point is not to go and do something you hate because it pays well, but if you can find something that works for you and pays well, the money may allow you to do whatever it is that really makes you happy. Now that my dad is almost 60, he travels lots and is crossing off a list of famous art pieces he wants to see. A word of warning, don't wait to do things that make you happy, and a work-life balance is very important. Scalawagst2 said, they are 100% telling the truth. People have basic needs which should be met. Food, warmth, shelter, safety and security. Without these it's difficult to be happy. Beyond this, you cannot buy happiness off a shelf, or through buying a service. You can buy brief periods of joy, fun or experience doing this, but happiness is something else. It's just what you are, and it's there irrespective of money, possessions, status, beauty or popularity. These things are just materialistic values. Happiness is a state of being and it comes from within. 1234 Tempcore said, money just adds another potential avenue for, but does not guarantee happiness. I was actually far happier when I made 1/4 as much. Why? I was spending every weekend with my wife, girlfriend at the time, going on camping trips and excursions. Work was still enjoyable and fun, and the company I worked for at the time was amazing for the time being. I made enough to afford a starter home, a decent car, basics beyond that. Life just felt good for that period of time. I really miss those days. What happened? Life threw everything it could at us after we got married. Work became a nightmare. Sure, I was making far more money over time, and then my wife was also contributing to the income. It didn't help. All it did was give us a means for vices. I was rewarding myself at the end of difficult work projects by buying crap I didn't need just for that momentary feeling of accomplishment. There were tiny periods of time where it was fun, such as when I got my first really nice motorcycle, or dream car. The novelty wears off fast though. It was a poor idea long term. You'll find that you can achieve more happiness with what you can build with your two hands than almost anything out there that you can simply buy. As an example, I find making music to be incredibly fulfilling. Aside from buying the instruments, it costs next to nothing. If you ever find yourself saying I'll be happy when I have, you're already on the wrong path. Xcharta on Reddit said, really, because I'm nearly broke and because of that I can't get things that would allow me to have more freedom with my life. With money, you can go to college, get a degree required for a very well-paying job and be set for life. Maybe you get lucky enough to start a successful business without money. None of that will happen. But if somebody rich said that, burn in hell. If I was rich, then why the hell am I happy? Also, if you're depressed and broke, just know, therapy costs money, aka, you are literally paying for happiness. That's what I do said. True. Money can't buy happiness. There are many problems that cause unhappiness that money can solve. Secure housing and food, dental care, reliable transportation, ability to pay for needs of family. Money won't solve many problems. Your child has brain cancer, or mental illness, or drug addiction? Money isn't going to buy you out of unhappiness. Money can solve some problems and therefore buy happiness, but certainly not all problems that cause unhappiness can be cured with money. And yes, Before someone says money can pay for drug treatment, I've seen $250K spent on various rehabs and still held a young girl in my arms in the ICU while her mother succumbed to a heroin overdose. That money spent definitely did not guarantee her happiness. DJ Corvid said, studies show that overall happiness increases with money until a point. That point is roughly $100,000 USD a year. That's for an individual, so it likely changes in partnerships, marriages. Once you hit a point where you can not only afford to live, but also have disposable income to pursue the things you enjoy, your overall happiness increases. After that, it's diminishing returns, which is probably why billionaires hoard wealth like dragons in hopes of chasing that high. Crapamum123 said, it sure can if you don't have a safe place to live, reliable food and household supplies, or a work week that's only 40 hours. When I see people having to work 60 or 70 hours a week just to get by, especially if they have kids and a spouse, I just think, what the fuck? We've gone back over 100 years in time, before unions put an end to some of this shit. The greatest generation was able to live a pretty damn good life because of it. My grandfathers were born in the 20s. One had a third-grade education, taught himself to read blueprints and had a great factory job. Worked his 40 hours, bought a house, had a stay-at-home wife, pension, was able to afford to build a vacation property 20 years before he retired. He retired when he was 60. They lived completely comfortably between pension and Social Security. That isn't asking for that much. Dragon S42 said, poverty sure buys misery though. Once your current and future basic needs plus some modest luxuries and comforts are taken care of, more money doesn't buy more happiness, but up to that point it matters a lot. I recall a study from a while back that put a tipping point at about $75K a year in the US, but I'm sure you'd have to adjust that for inflation cost of living by now. Handy Drunkard said, money buys choices. Back before a wealth of information was available online, people had to pay to learn random stuff through courses. After finishing university and starting my career, I usually had some extra money and was always taking one course or another just for fun. Sailing, mushroom foraging, carpentry, small engine repair, various college-level cooking courses. All fun, and I feel like I learned a few practical things that the average person doesn't have as much knowledge about. Incognito ACC4Reddit said, that they're right to an extent. I've recently come into a small fortune at 26 yo. I'm a millionaire but not multimillionaire, living in an area where that could equate to me never working again, living on a budget or working whatever career I see fit and retiring very early and comfortably. I'm still just as unhappy as before. It can purchase stuff that grants me happiness but certainly not anything tangible. I dropped a decent sum of money and there isn't anything that really gives you that happiness but yourself. Money could help me achieve happiness easier but it certainly isn't buying it. Solid Gummy Logic said, nope. But it can buy stability. If I had the chance to have a stable financial source that didn't require me to break my back 50+ HRS a week, I'd have the time, brain space and energy to fix all the other shit going on in my life. But frankly, eating and paying my rent have become a much higher priority than fixing my depression, anxiety and substance abuse issues. No point fixing that shit if I'm living on the street and can't feed myself. Edit. I just reread my comment and we're really just living in a dystopian nightmare. Damn, as a kid, I never thought I'd utter the words work takes priority over my happiness. I want out. Animus420 said, it's proven that to an extent money does buy happiness. For example, someone who has enough money to afford what they need and not worry about rent, food, etc. is more likely to be happier than someone in poverty. That to an extent part comes in when you have two people who are not in poverty but one makes more than the other. Example, someone who makes 100K is more likely to be less happy than a millionaire. This isn't even arguable. Makatha Commitment said, money doesn't cure sadness. My mom recently passed away and left me roughly $500,000 between her assets and life insurance. I'd rip the check up today if it would bring her back and cure my sadness. She raised me as a single mom my whole life. We were poor for most of my childhood. Lived in the same shitty 2-bedroom apartment for 15 years. Had free lunches. We were a basic lower-class family. So when the check came in the mail the other day and when I opened it, I just stared at the number. It felt surreal. I'd never had that amount of money at any point in my life. But the thing is, I felt empty. And I felt sad. I quickly realized no amount of money can cure sadness. So if happy is the opposite of sad and money can't cure sadness, money can't buy happiness. I guess for me, I'm probably more of a believer's the saying now more than I ever have been. Mousterian said, an abundance of money can't buy happiness, but too little money can indeed rob happiness. Someone with $1 billion lives at about the same level of happiness as someone with $280 billion. There is a limit to the amount of pleasure money can buy. So, without a federal maximum wage and healthy distribution of the tax burden, the greed of a handful of people robs the happiness of millions of the people which America's government is supposedly of by and for. These people are also entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Mike McWack said, as someone who has gone from pre-pandemic earnings of £500, I was working on my startup and working in Victoria's Secret part-time, and furlough of £400 crying myself to sleep because I couldn't pay rent, putting off breaking up with my terrible ex because I didn't think I'd have anywhere to live after my roommate moved out, to having since January 21st gone to earning over $50K in joint income with my boyfriend pushing us into a six-figure household. I'd say it's true-ish. I'd say it definitely buys peace of mind. It buys home comforts, travel, fancy dinners. It buys little extras that you didn't even notice until that point, like walking into Zara and realizing I didn't have to meticulously calculate the price of everything in my basket. But it does get boring. To a certain extent, life is still life. At one point we were in Mexico and realized we spent a full month in one location and didn't go to the beach, but we were there for 6 months and eventually everything starts to look the same, so we came back to London for 6 months. When we first arrived that would have sounded crazy to me, but when you see the same thing every day, it's still beautiful but less impressive. Mike McWack said, I still work just as much as I did before, I still have my same insecurities and personal worries. And then to add to that, my first role was such a huge pay jump I had imposter syndrome for months and would have mini panic attacks and floods of tears telling my boyfriend I couldn't do it and I didn't deserve it and it was too much. I'm settling in a little more now. We have a long-term home here, but sometimes I feel slightly melancholy for my old apartment. It wasn't perfect but I was still happy there. I was stressed about money but I was still happy with the other aspects of my situation. I also sometimes feel like I missed a step apartment-wise, like I jumped too big of a gap with salary and life changes and everything all at once and there should have been something in between. Sometimes I walk past an apartment block and think that it could have been a nice stopgap. So does money buy happiness? Kinda, and even then only to a certain point. You got more money than you can spend in a lifetime. Your money isn't gonna help you much. There is a cutoff, according to science $75,000.